This is the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast, your source for the strategies, systems, and smarts you need to turn possibility into purpose. Every week, we dive into dynamic conversations as our host, Nicole Greer, interviews leadership and business experts. They're here to shed light on practical solutions to the challenges of personal and professional development. Now, here's your host, a professional speaker, coach, and consultant, Nicole Greer.
Welcome, everybody, to the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. My name is Nicole Greer, and they call me the Vibrant Coach, and I am here with another amazing author. I have Martha Lawrence on the show today, and look what she put in the mail to me, everybody. And this rarely happens because everybody just sends me their book through the Amazon. Look what she did. She hand wrote a little note to me in the front because her mama raised her right. So I'm so excited to have that. All right, let me tell you all about Martha Lawrence. Martha Lawrence is a veteran book editor and an executive editor at Blanchard. And we're going to talk about the Ken Blanchard today, where she has worked side by side with business guru Ken Blanchard for over 2 decades. He looks like he's worked with you for 2 decades. I mean, he's maintaining, but Martha, she doesn't look like she's done 2 decades. So go to the YouTube. You should probably go to the YouTube and watch this. All right. So she has edited hundreds of books, including Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, and co-authored Trust Works with Ken Blanchard. She is also the author of an award-nominated mystery series. We do need to know about that. And a passionate advocate for leading with kindness and purpose. Oh, I'm so glad you're here.
I am so delighted to be here. As I said before the show, Nicole, I watched your TED Talk. And if any of your listeners haven't seen your TED Talk, go cue it up right now. It is the best 18 minutes you'll ever invest in your life. It's really awesome.
Oh, that's so
just
sweet.
an honor to be here with you.
Oh, that's so good. Well, we like the nonfiction. We're all about leading culture, HR subjects. We're all about that. But tell us about your mystery series, because we like to sit on a beach sometimes and read something that's just fun.
Well, back in the the mystery series, oh gosh, it's the Elizabeth Chase mystery series. And I'll give you the whole rundown. How much time do we have?
We got an hour.
Okay, so I'll give you the rundown. So I had been a professional book editor and acquisitions editor with Harcourt Brace and with Simon and Schuster Publishers, and I really was secretly a writer, but I didn't have the guts to write a book. And then life delivered some really hard lessons to me to get me to write. The first thing that happened was a serial rapist broke into my house and raped me at knife point. And that was a moment where it was like
OMG.
OMG. And so it was a wake-up call about, get your life together. Life is precious, right?
100%.
Just so your listeners know, the police apprehended him a year later. He had been convicted of many sex crimes before, and he was put away for, the rest of his life.
Thank God.
Yeah, he raped 9 women in that series before they caught him. But that introduced me to the criminal justice system, right? Because I had to identify him in a lineup. Terrifying, challenging thing to do, very re-traumatizing.
Yes.
And so, but I got to see the criminal justice system up close and personal. But as if that weren't enough, I then had a former boyfriend who began, when we broke up, he started to stalk me. And that went on for 2 years. And he broke into my house, threw me on the floor, and started choking me. And that was another moment where my life flashed before my eyes. And at that point, it was kind of like, if I'm going to write a book, I'd better get to it. And here again,
if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Okay.
Yeah, if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Right.
So here again, I was introduced to the criminal justice system because he was also arrested and convicted of stalking. So I got to know cops, I got to know DAs, I got to know the whole thing. And I had been a long time mystery fan. As an editor, I published something called the New Black Mass Quarterly at Harcourt, which was about noir fiction. So I'd been a fan of the genre for many years. And these books started pouring out of me. And so I wrote those. I published 5 of them. And then when my 5th book was published, the week it came out and I was scheduled to go on tour for that book and, fly to all these different cities, 9/11 happened.
Oh, good night.
I was able to drive to a few local book signings, But that was such a sobering experience, and when I got back home to my desk here and looked at the manuscript I was working on, which was a big thriller about bad guys and catching people doing things wrong, okay? I just thought, I am not making the contribution to the world that I wanna make. I wanna write something more uplifting. No shade on my mystery writer friends, and, I love Harlan Coben. Sue Grafton was a friend of mine. I loved her, was inspired by her, but it just wasn't my path anymore,
Yeah.
and it was scary because it was like, "Well, but this is how I pay my mortgage. What am I gonna do?" And it was
Right.
right around that time that I found out that Ken Blanchard needed someone to help him with his book publishing program, and I jumped at the chance to do that. I'd been
Oh,
a
heck
fan of
yeah.
his for many years. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. Oh, I hate the beginning of your story, but thank you for sharing this. I mean, oh, that's just mind-boggling. Okay, so everybody get your head in the game. So Martha, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're alive, and we're glad that you are friends with Ken Blanchard. That's wonderful. So tell me about this book because I'll tell you the first Ken Blanchard book I have still on the shelf, One Minute Manager.
You bet.
I talk about it all the time. If you were to listen to all these podcasts, people will be like, "Oh, she's talking about that 1 minute book again." Because it is so classic, it's not even funny. I mean, you need to read it.
It's a classic book, and, when that book came out, it was 1982, and I was still an editor in New York City. I was working at Simon and Schuster, and that book was everywhere. And I think people today don't understand what that's like. Back in those days, before everything was so fractured in social media, I mean, there were only a few major publishers and a few major TV stations, and so if you got visibility, you got visibility. I mean, that book was on the bestseller list, New York Times, for 3 years. It sold tens of millions of copies, and it changed the way I thought about leadership. I mean, I had been taught that leadership was, "Okay, I'm the boss. I'm in charge. I tell people what to do. As long as they're doing things right, cool. The minute they do something wrong, that's my cue to jump in and set them straight." And
Right.
this book turned that concept on its head. It's like, "What? Praise people? Sit down with them and set goals with them? Coach them? What the heck is this? This is so touchy-feely," you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so you and me both, big time fan, and the book still sells. It's now, of course, the new One Minute Manager, Spencer Johnson, Ken's co-author, and he sat down and revised it in 2015. But, yeah, it's timeless. It truly is timeless.
Yeah, and my favorite concept in there is manage by walking around. So he called it MBWA was the way they titled it or whatever. And as a young person in the workforce, when I read that, I'm like, my leaders never come out of the office. I mean, what the heck? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
Yeah,
catch,
you and, like, Brené Brown, she said, somebody handed her the One Minute Manager during her first management job when she worked at AT&T in the 1990s, and she said, "That was the book that taught me everything about what I do about leading today." So it influenced a whole generation of
oh
people.
yeah, all of us girls over 50. But anyway, so I love the book. Okay, so, that managed by walking around, the whole point was to catch people doing things the right way, catch people doing things right. So that's the name of this book. And the subtitle is How Ken Blanchard Changed the Way the World Leads. So to introduce this audience that may not, they're like, who the heck is Ken Blanchard?
Who is Ken Blanchard?
He's amazing. Listen up. Martha's going to tell you.
Yeah, so Ken Blanchard, well, first of all, he's a guy who was told in college that he couldn't write, okay? And he went
Fantastic.
on to write, 70 books, several of which have been multi-million copy bestsellers. By his own admission, he couldn't even balance his own checkbook. And yet he goes on to co-found a global leadership development corporation. Before Ken Blanchard came along, and he came along to give others credit, like Tom Peters, who also promotes management by walking around. He was part of that cohort of organizational experts who changed leadership from a top-down command and control to a side-by-side leadership model. And
Mhm.
that is really what Ken Blanchard is all about. And it really fundamentally changed the way organizations like Google and Apple and all that today, they are practicing the principles. Well, the good managers in those organizations are practicing the principles that Ken Blanchard and a handful of others taught over the years. So that's who Ken Blanchard is.
Yeah, and I got this little degree a couple years ago in organization development, but these are the godfathers of organization development, right? So it's not just about the profit and loss statement, it's about growing the people that actually grow the profit and loss statement. So,
Exactly. And,
yeah,
like Simon Sinek calls Ken the OG, right? He's
right,
the original gangster, right? And
right.
and Ken's concept right there, Nicole, exactly is, it's about results and relationships. And what he proved through research and all kinds of data is that it's not just about people are not just tools to get results and bottom line profits. People are part of the equation. And when you take care of your people, that takes care of your bottom line. And it sounds counterintuitive. Too many leaders don't understand that. They think, it's touchy feely, but it actually improves your bottom line if you work on those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's like another sidebar about that is I am such an employee performance management person because as a young person, I wanted to do good. Like I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to be promoted. I wanted to, but I knew I didn't deserve it. I wasn't being entitled. I was like, I wish somebody would tell me how to do more or teach me more or coach me more because I'll do whatever you tell me to learn how to go forward. And I think that people really want that. They want to be developed, and developed people make you more money. That's what I know. So,
Exactly. It's not a finite pie.
right.
If you develop awesome people, I think about my dad was also a corporation president and CEO of his company. And he once told me, I want to hire the guy who wants my job. I want to
Right.
develop him yeah, because you want the most competent, amazing, awesome people. The pie gets bigger and bigger, so it's a mindset.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, so this book kind of takes us through like Ken's development, right?
Exactly. It
Okay.
does.
All right. So on page 7, we've got a quote that I've got highlighted. It says, "Life is a very special occasion. Don't miss it." And what you guys listening don't understand is that Martha and she watched my TED Talk, which I'm so proud. So now I have one more view. Why don't y'all watch it? Watch it so Nicole has 10 more views. How many of y'all are listening? Anyway, so
Don't miss it, you guys. Don't miss it. I mean it. I mean it. It will inspire you to get off your butt.
that's right. But and then she said, "You know how you have the lifeline in your talk on your in your TED Talk?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I've got that same thing right above my desk." And here Ken, who is everything, endorses it. Life is a very special occasion. Don't miss it. So tell us about how Ken Blanchard, his family roots, his childhood. Tell us about that.
Oh, well, Ken was blessed with two really amazing parents. He had
Yeah.
them
Isn't that
who
something?
taught him early on, you're not better than anybody else, but nobody is better than you. There's a pearl of goodness in everyone. Dig for it. So that set up. And then his father retired as a rear admiral in the Navy and taught him so many leadership lessons. I can get into those if you want to.
I would love
Like,
to hear at least one, maybe
okay,
two.
so Ken was attracted to leadership. He just kind of, even as a little kid, his mom said the kids followed him around. He just has some people are just born with this aura of you just want to be around them, you just want to follow them. And because he knew it wasn't about him from an early age, because his parents wouldn't have any of that, he really was all about others. And so he ran for the president of his seventh grade class and won. And he came running home and he's like, Mom, Dad, I won the presidency. And his dad pulled him aside and said, Son, that's terrific. I'm really proud of you. I'm glad you won the presidency. But now that you have that title, don't ever use it. He said, people don't follow leaders because they have a title. They follow them because they trust them and respect them. And he had been in the military. His dad had led people into the islands in the Pacific theater of World War II, and he lost like 70% of his men. But
Oof.
the people who worked under Admiral Blanchard really respected him and loved him. And he said, if they don't, they'll shoot you before they'll shoot the enemy. So, Ken got all kinds of lessons about that.
Yeah, okay, so I love that story, and it says in the next chapter that in his leadership beginnings, this great story you just told, but he was also a tenacious student, and just I can't say it enough times, you have to be a lifelong learner. You have to have an evolution of yourself. You gotta be a new guy or gal every day.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, Nicole,
Yeah,
because yes, Ken was a lifelong learner. You know what? He has the kind of intelligence that isn't measured in tests. He wasn't like I was a straight A student all along. I always was in the front row listening to the teacher and,
right, taking good
all that kind
notes. Mhm.
of, that annoying person. Ken had this sister, Sandy, and she was brilliant and she was an excellent student. And she really mentored him about being a good student, and he developed that habit of lifelong learners. And so one of the things he did, if you look at the 70 books he published, most of them are co-authored with other people. And his mother used to say to him, Ken, don't you want to write a book by yourself? And he said, Mom, learning is one of my primary values. I already know what I know. If I partner with somebody else, it's going to be
Oh,
more fun and I'm going to learn so much. And it's not about having my name on a book. It's about sharing wisdom and learning. And then just recently, I found out that, Ken did a TED talk back, I don't know, it was several years ago. And we sent out recently some invitations to people to my book launch, which is happening on Thursday
yay!
next week. Yeah. And so many people wrote back to me about what Ken Blanchard means to them. And one of the people was a coach who was backstage with him at KPBS when he was getting ready to film his TED Talk. And he said, I was so impressed with Ken Blanchard because a lot of famous guys will just show up 10 minutes before the taping and, act like you're, just a cog in a machine. Ken Blanchard got there early. He watched everyone's performance. He talked and encouraged people backstage, and he really wanted he was just doing the lifelong learning, and
Yeah.
he really used that experience to continue to learn. So I was like, that's Ken.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. Yeah. And there's so many people that get one book and they think they're celebrity status and they can write it for a long time. But again, he's putting out 70 books. Y'all get your head wrapped around that. The other guy from history, everybody write down this name, Peter Drucker. That's the other
Peter
guy.
Tucker, a friend of Ken's. Ken and Peter were good friends, and there's a story about that. And Ken really deeply respected Peter Drucker, and Peter said to him one time, he goes, I came back to my office one day and my grandson was sitting in my office chair and he was reading the 1 Minute Manager, and he looked up and he said, Granddaddy, why don't you ever write a book like this? Because it was easy to read. Peter Drucker is brilliant, but his books, there's a different style. Ken has this very readable, breezy storytelling style that
Yeah.
makes the learning fun.
That's right, and if you sat down with that one-minute manager, you could get her done in one sitting if you tried
Yeah,
hard, it'd be
yeah.
easy, but Peter Drucker, he's got, 14 chapters and small font, and you gotta stop and think every so often about, "What does he say?"
Yeah.
But if you read all of his stuff and all of Ken's stuff and all of Martha's stuff, you would be on the road to success, let me tell you. All right, now I love a good Martin Luther King story, and on page 40, there's this story about Ken. You write, Ken had been taught by his father to look for leadership role models. He discovered a powerful one during his freshman year at Cornell when Martin Luther King Jr. came to speak at Sage Chapel on campus. Oh, I would love to know about that because I travel quite a bit and I'll go through the Atlanta airport, and in the international terminal, they have a whole thing set up about Martin Luther King. And the best thing in that thing, Martha, is there's this plexiglass box and it's a book where it's opened and it was written by Gandhi, but it's got Martin Luther King's like pencil notes in the side.
Oh, I have got to see that. Okay, just
So
I just
good.
okay, I just came back from a much needed vacation in Kauai where I read
Yay.
this book.
Oh, stop.
It's the Pulitzer Prize winning biography of Martin Luther King, written by Jonathan Eig. I tore through this book. It's a 600-page book. It
Yes, it is.
reads like a thriller. and it was so inspiring,
Oh, I'm gonna get that.
and I was so interested in it because I looked and so Ken met Martin Luther King in 19 it was either 1957 or 58. It was during his freshman year, and Ken happened to be serving as an usher in the chapel that day at the
Ah!
Cornell chapel. He was, he went to undergraduate at Cornell,
Yeah.
and Martin Luther came through to speak. That was the year Martin Luther King was just bursting onto the national stage at that point in his life. He had just been on Time magazine's cover, for all his amazing accomplishments in Montgomery, I believe. But what impressed Ken about Martin Luther King was how present he was and how what he preached about from the pulpit, he was practicing. He didn't have to be nice to these two young freshmen who were being ushers, but he absolutely gave them his full attention. And it really impressed Ken. And Ken later, certainly later in his career, became very, very much of a proponent of servant leadership.
Yeah.
And that was inspired by Martin Luther King, who, of course, said, anybody can be great because anybody can serve.
Right. Oh, that's so good. All right. Well, that's another book I gotta get and I gotta read. All right. But that's a good challenge for me. I love it. Okay. So he's developing his leadership style. He's having these interactions. It also says in here he met with a former US president.
Oh, yeah, a couple of them, actually. Well, he was on let's see, I don't know which one you're thinking of, but he was traveling to an event in Hawaii, I believe, and in first class. And they came by and they said, "Excuse me, we're so sorry to inconvenience all you first class passengers, but we're going to have to seat you in the rear of the plane. Something has come up." Well, President Jimmy Carter's Air Force One wasn't available, and he needed to charter that flight because he was going to the same event that Ken was going to and speak at the same place Ken was going to speak. And so later at the event, there was like some sort of dance or some sort of function, and Ken saw, President Carter at that event. And then the next morning, Ken was outside the lobby and there were a bunch of people standing around. They were planning to go on a run, and they said, President Carter was going to run with us, but he said Blanchard stepped on his foot last night when he was dancing. So Ken, Ken had to go apologize to the president. He didn't realize he'd done that, and he said, "You and Margie, you're quite the dancers." So yeah, Ken had encounters with a lot of different people in his life.
Oh,
You
how
know,
blessed. That's awesome. Okay, well, you mentioned Margie, and that's chapter 4. So, always believe that something wonderful is about to happen. That's a quote from Ken. So, tell us a little bit about Margie.
well, you know what they say, Nicole, behind every great man, there's a woman.
That's
And
right.
when I think about the Blanchard legacy and Ken's legacy, what I know is that it is Ken and Margie Blanchard. Ken always says, I married above myself.
Oh, isn't that
Margie
nice?
came from a family, I think she was a fourth or fifth generation Cornelian. I think somebody in her family, I would have to go back to the book, was enrolled at Cornell like shortly after the doors opened. So she's brilliant. She is wise. She is deeply loving. She is the one who actually came up with the phrase, keep your I love yous up to date, because we
Oh,
never
I've
know
never
how
heard
long
that.
yeah, we never know how long we have here, right? Keep your I love yous up to date. There's nothing more important than love. So Margie got her PhD from Cornell as well. Ken was a university professor before he became a famous author and business executive and business guru. So Margie she's amazing to this day. She's just amazing. And they fell in love. He tells a story in the book about falling in love with Margie. She actually was engaged to one of his friends who said, "Hey, take care of her. I'm going to be away for the summer." This was during summer break at Cornell. He goes, "Take Margie out a couple times because, she's going to be lonely there." And so Ken very innocently thought, okay, I'll do that. Let's bring Margie along. And he went to pick her up. She was helping out at a summer camp for kids with disabilities.
Oh,
And so he went to pick her up there and he saw her working with these children that had disabilities. And on the way back into town, he said, why do you work with these kids? And just listening to the compassion in her heart and how much caring and love she had for these children. He just fell in love with her on the ride back to town. And so kind of the die was set. His friend Looper, they're still friends to this day. Looper actually named one of his kids after Ken. So all was well, it all worked out well.
That's right. That's right. That's so good. And Margie wouldn't have done it. She seems like a straightforward girl. She wouldn't have fallen for Ken if it wasn't right, right?
And let me also say that she became an executive. For many years, she led the company. She was the president of the Ken Blanchard company. So she's quite capable and talented and, as I said, amazing.
Yeah, like a dynamic duo. I love that.
Are you ready to build your vibrant culture? Bring Nicole Greer to speak to your leadership team, conference, or organization to help them with their strategies, systems, and smarts to increase clarity, accountability, energy, and results. Your organization will get lit from within. Email her at nicole@vibrantculture.com and be sure to check out Nicole's TEDx talk at vibrantculture.com.
Okay, so he meets Margie, he marries Margie, and poor Looper, he's out in the cold. But anyway, so chapter 5, it talks about thwarted dreams from 1962 to 1966. But we've got a Ken Blanchard quote here that says, "Keep learning. If you stop, you might as well let them throw the dirt on you because you're already dead." So there it is again, friends. Okay, so what happened to him between 1962 and 1966? What were the thwarted dreams?
Well, thwarted dreams, I know that he had he thought that he would graduate from college.
Yeah.
And he always thought he'd just go into sales, and as I recall, after he got his bachelor's degree, he went to some sort of sales training program where they were going to select candidates, and he
Right.
didn't get selected. And he was like, well, what am I going to do now? And
Isn't that funny?
then it was like, business is not for me. Forget about corporate America. I'm going to go into university administration. I love the university environment. So he recalibrated his dream
Mhm.
to become a university dean. So that's what happened to him. As I said earlier, he didn't get great test scores. And this book is an inspiration for people who think you have to have all the luck in the world and all the entitlement in the world to get ahead, because Ken had a lot of hardships in his life. He had a lot of rejections. As I said, people told him in college he couldn't write. You'll perish. You'll either publish or perish. You're going to perish. You can't write. And he was terrible at math. So who would think he would ever be able to? I'm not terrible at math, but it wasn't his strong
thing. He's a word guy.
Wasn't his thing. And so if you're a person who feels like you're not enough, this is an inspiring story about somebody who, didn't have all those gifts and yet still made such a tremendous impact in the world.
Yeah, and we all love an underdog, don't we? Because we are underdogs.
We're all underdogs.
Yeah,
We all got our
there's
thing.
only one Taylor Swift. I mean, like, there's just not going to be another one either.
I'm sure she's got her inferiority complexes somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure, but I mean, she's pretty epic. Okay, so he went off to Ohio University, I think, and worked there for a while, right? But
Yeah.
you've got a thing in here. He says the Ohio University administration's refusal to listen to students' concerns. So he experienced kind of this top-down autocratic leadership there, left a bad
Yeah.
taste in Ken's mouth. And at 30 years of age, he liked the idea of teaching in a more liberal academic atmosphere. Margie was open to change because she's that kind of gal. And so she went to go work on her doctorate. And so he jumped at the chance of an associate professorship. That's hard to say, professorship.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. So he leads and he decides that he's going to develop a new leadership philosophy. The quote on page 77 says, "Help people reach their full potential." And here it is, the title of the book. Don't miss it, everybody. Right? Catch people doing something right. So what happened when he got to the University of Massachusetts Amherst? What happened there?
Oh, that was just such a wonderful time in his life. This was
Yeah.
in the early 70s, and there's a photo section in the book, and I just cracked up when I found that old photo of Ken with his bushy sideburns and his polyester suit. It was so classic. But the University of Massachusetts at that time was
There it is. That's great. Anyway, sorry, I digress. I love these pictures in here too. I just adore them. Yes. All
Yeah,
right.
they're fun. They're
Yeah.
fun. And the publisher, it's unusual to have a color photo section. That's a little more expensive. But the publisher,
Right.
because there's a picture in there, Ken's house unfortunately burned down in the wildfires in 2007. And there's a picture
Oh,
at the end of that photo section of Ken sifting through the ashes with his friend and colleague Pat Zagarmi. And everything's gray except for Pat's shirt or something, as I recall.
yeah,
And that's why the publisher wanted to publish that photo section in color to just show how striking that was. But University of
yeah.
Massachusetts in the 1970s was all open to experimentation. This was such a rich time in American history, and Ken kind of caught that wave. He was able to be very creative in how he designed his classes. And so, like, I talked to many of the people who studied with him and taught with him. And for example, he was teaching from the autobiography of Malcolm X, which was interesting because later he served on the doctoral dissertation of Malcolm X's wife,
What?
Betty Shabazz. So he was teaching, and he was really developing this theory about, adapting your leadership style to the needs of those that you're developing, rather than just top down telling them what to do, like coming alongside, coaching, supporting, what do they need at what stage of development on this particular task. So that's what he was doing at UMass.
Yeah, I love that. And the thing about it is if you want to learn something, you got to teach it, you got to research it, you got to look into it. And that just made him so masterful later on that he started in the academic world, I think.
Absolutely, and he was researching. There was a guy, Fielder, who had developed this contingency theory, and so, he was really steeped in all of that, and he had worked with Dr. Paul Hersey at Ohio University
Right?
when he was
Situational
before
leadership, everybody.
yeah, before he came to, and that was what Dr. Paul Hersey developed with Ken, situational leadership, and then, Ken went on to develop a different model eventually. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just nerding out completely over all these names because these are the books that are on my shelf, and I still have people that want to like do situational leadership. They're like, "Can you teach that?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I got a PowerPoint on that. We can do that.
Well,
Absolutely."
yeah, situational leadership is a wonderful model, and, he wrote a textbook with Dr. Paul Hersey, actually at Ohio University. He heard about a class that Hersey taught, and he wanted to teach it desperately because it was supposed to be really, really amazing, and he did eventually take that amazing class, and that's where he found out that he was a writer because Hersey liked the papers that Ken had turned in for the course and said, "Do you want to help me write this textbook?" And so Ken and Paul Hersey worked on this textbook, The Management of Organizational Behavior, which was in print for 10 editions and was used. Well, you know about it. So
Yeah. Oh,
there you go.
so good. I love it. All right. So he's in the academic world, but you've got a chapter 8. It says 1976 to 1980, a company is born. And so our Ken Blanchard quote here is anything worth doing does not have to be done perfectly at first. Isn't that good news? We could do the 80-20 thing. Yeah. So tell us about Ken's company. What was born?
Yeah, well, the quote is about if anyone has developed their own company or their own thing, you don't know how to do it before you do it. You
No.
just and so what happened was Ken, he was on sabbatical from UMass, and he was invited to speak at a conference because one of his doctoral students said, "You're such an incredible, inspiring speaker. Come speak to the Young Presidents Organization in Hawaii." And so Ken had 3 sessions, and the first session, there were a couple hundred people at his session. The next day, his second session, he had 400 people there. And word had gotten around, "Hey,
That's
this
right.
guy from New York, he's funny. He's got some great ideas." And the third day, basically the whole conference came to his session, and they had to take the partitions out of the room and to accommodate the crowd because nobody really went anywhere else. They all wanted to hear Ken Blanchard. And at the end of that session, the audience jumped to its feet and gave him a standing ovation. And he's a university professor. This is all kind of,
New to him.
wow,
Yeah.
nice. But the organizers of the event came up to him afterward and said, "Blanchard, that was phenomenal. What are you going to do next?" And he said, "Well, I'm going back to UMass to teach." And they said, "You're crazy. When you're hot, you're hot. You got to start your own company." And he said, again, "I can't even balance my own checkbook. How am I going to start my own company?" And they said, "We'll help you." And these 5 guys agreed to be his sort of informal they wanted to nurture him and support him in developing this company, and he had sort of dreamed about doing that with some of his doctoral students. They had talked
Sure.
about, wow, we want to change the world. What if we started an organization and taught people these things? And here was the chance. So, and what was great about it was, by having your own company, this is something Margie pointed out, rather than just being a business consultant who tells businesses what to do, but they don't know how to run it. They're not running a business. The Blanchards had a business to run. So they were running into the same problems that their clients were running into, or I should say, solving the problems that their clients were trying to solve.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, I will tell you, I am a consultant, and people all the time, they take one look at me and they're like, "How is she going to know what to do?" You know what I mean? Like, she doesn't understand what we do here. We do manufacturing or whatever, but it's like, "Oh, no, I have a team. I have people,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
am trying to make things happen over here." Yeah, so it's
Exactly.
really important to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk. Yeah, so I love this chapter because I'm all about, like, starting things and putting things in order and making sure that you start things out right, and I love how you talk about he's calling the dream team together, and then he had a founder's dream to create opportunities for people that we love and care for to work together to make a difference in people's lives and to have some fun. I just love that.
Yeah, you notice in that first little purpose thing, those 3 things they set out, there was nothing in there about making money.
Right,
That
right,
was
right.
that was
Where's the money?
Yeah, that was one of the you can see how innocent they were. It's really pretty funny. They had to revise that to, like, "Okay, well, how do we stay in business?" You know?
Right, right. But like the heart of it, you can hear that heart.
You can, and what's amazing is that dream team, we actually sadly just lost 2 of the founding associates this year,
Oh,
Drea Zagarmi and Don Carew. Drea Zagarmi was one of Ken's doctoral students. I believe he was. Don Carew, he met at Ohio University and was also a professor. But that team, they stayed with Blanchard all through the decades. I mean, which tells you about when you come together with people in a spirit of love and cooperation, it's so powerful,
yeah.
you know.
That is so good. That is so good. Ah, I'm sorry for the loss of those 2. I'm sure there was an outpouring when they celebrated their lives. Okay. So the 1-minute manager, we've already kind of talked about it, but we could talk about it a little bit more. The heyday was 1980 to 1983. And when I saw that date, I was like, that was when I was in high school because I graduated in 1984. But I mean, but that book was, I mean, I graduated, I went into the work. I didn't go to college right away, Martha, and but like somehow I got that book in my hand right away. I don't know who gave it. I'm sure I didn't buy it. I'm
Yep.
sure somebody said,
Yep.
"Read this,"
Yep. Yep.
and I did.
Yeah, so that chapter, actually, it's funny because you talked about how you can read it in one sitting. The
Yeah.
publisher actually said, when they bought the book, they said, "Well, it's a bathtub book. You draw hot water for your bath, you get in the bathtub, you start reading. By the time the water is cold, you're done, and you've got it. You've got the concepts in your head, and they're really sticky concepts too. It's
Yes.
easy to carry that and act on those teachings in that book. So often we'll read a book and it's like, what was it again? Because there's too much stuff in it. You can't contain it all. But 1-minute manager, it's fun to read and it's sticky stuff. And so, yeah, that chapter tells the story about Ken meeting his co-author Spencer Johnson at a cocktail party.
Yeah.
And Spencer Johnson at that time was writing children's books. And Margie had met Spencer and she was chatting with him and she was charmed by him. Spencer was a very brilliant, charming man. And she grabbed Ken and she said, "Ken, you have to meet this guy. He writes children's books. You write books for managers. You guys should get together and write a book for managers
Go,
because they won't
Margie.
yeah, write a children's books for managers because they won't read anything else." So that's how that came to be.
Oh, that's so good. And I'm not sure if I'm right, but wasn't he part of Who Moved My Cheese?
He was, and he
Which is
wanted Ken.
like a cartoony mice thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I forget, Sniff and Scratch or something, the
Right,
mice
right.
who
Yeah.
they don't like it when their cheese is moved. Yeah, that's a story that Spencer used to tell on the speaking circuit for years and years, and Ken kept saying, "Spencer, you gotta turn that into a book, you gotta turn that into a book," and he said, "Ken, will you write it with me?" And he said, "I don't have time," and Ken said, "But I'll write the foreword," and so Spencer wrote the book, Ken wrote the foreword. That's another amazing book if you don't have it. Who Moved My Cheese? More than ever, it's relevant because things are changing so fast. Excuse me, AI, okay? Yeah. Who moved
Yeah,
my
I don't know. Guess what I did last month? The whole month of September and the first weekend of October, I did a deep dive AI training. OMG, y'all. I'm just overwhelmed, excited. Just I don't know.
It's a tool. It's
it,
a tool. I use it.
don't be scared of it, people.
Don't be scared. Dive in.
Yeah,
But we've got to keep it working for us instead of vice versa.
yeah, 100%, 100%. All right, good. Okay, so this little teeny tiny company that doesn't have anything about making money in its little dream statement ends up being a global organization. Yeah, so between 1980 and 1989, they just go wild. And this whole idea, like, everybody who's listening, we talk all the time on the show about culture, right? There's the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. And one of the things we talk about is mission, vision, core values. Like almost every author is going to mention one of these three things, but he was really instrumental in getting this like into the business acumen, I think.
Exactly. I mean, the mission, one of the things that attracted me when I started working with Ken, I didn't even know he had an organization because I came from the publishing world. I just knew him as a famous author.
Right.
And that's what happened. I ran across the website for the Blanchard organization, and the mission at that time, there was something at the top of the website that said, releasing the power and potential of people for the common good.
Ooh.
And at that moment, it was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a part of their mission. That's what attracted me to the company. It's like, I want to be releasing the power and I want to use whatever gifts I have to lift people up and to make the world a better place.
Hmm.
And the culture at Blanchard is very different. I mean, I still work at the company. Every year, Blanchard gets the most loved workplace award, the nation's, it's always up there because it has such a culture of caring for others. And there's a lot of hugging. If you're not an extrovert, it can be a challenge. There's a lot of hugging. But there's also like in early days, Pat Zagarmi, one of the founding associates, another brilliant person who brought her creativity and just acute intelligence to everything we do. She had a daughter when the company first started, and she established the Infant at Work program. And that means that for the first 6 months of your baby's life, you bring that baby into the office. Well, what kind of crazy policy is that, right?
I love it.
But people loved it because it was a stress reducer and it brought people together. And there's a way to do that. And so it's very pet friendly, very kid friendly, very diversity friendly, and that's just the culture. The culture is everything.
Oh,
Culture drives performance.
yeah. Did y'all hear that? Martha just said culture is everything. And that's so true. Yeah. And I love that there are these values that are on page 126. So listen to the values: ethical behavior, relationships, success, and learning. And that ethical behavior is so interesting to me because everywhere I go, Martha, the leaders are like, people aren't on time. And we're not sure if we should bring them back in the office because we're not sure they're working. And, all of these things that are like really ethical issues,
Ooh. Ooh.
and so to just flat out put it out there as your number one core value, ethical behavior, I think is genius.
Yeah, Ken
Do the
wrote a
right
book.
thing.
Yeah, do the right thing. Ken wrote a book in 1988. This was a while ago. His publisher, after the One Minute Manager was such a success, came to him and said, would you write a book with Dr. Norman Vincent Peale?
Oh,
Dr. Norman Vincent Peale wrote a book way back when called The Power of Positive Thinking.
oh yeah.
And yeah, it's just a fundamental. My parents read that book and brought me up on that book, and it's all about the power of positive thinking. So Ken and Norman Vincent Peale wrote a book called The Power of Ethical Management. And one of the things in there is sometimes when the numbers look right, the decision is still wrong. And there's a story about that. After 9/11, for training companies, it was kind of devastating because at that time, this was before Zoom, trainers had to fly all over the country to deliver their training. And so Blanchard started bleeding money and they lost all this money. And the leadership team came together, looked at the numbers and said, we're going to have to lay off 10% of the workforce or else we can't stay in business. And Ken was in the meeting. I talked to somebody who was in that meeting with him, and she said, he looked up and he had tears running down his face. And he said, it's not going to happen. I didn't build this company to put my people out on the street at a time like this. And the other leadership people who all loved the company and cared for the company said, we feel the same way, Ken, but numbers are numbers. What are we going to do? And he said, we've been preaching about how transparent we are. Let's just be transparent. Let's open up the books to all the employees, show everybody where we are, and brainstorm. And that's exactly what they did.
Mm.
And people found a way. People took salary cuts, people found savings, and they got through it together. And then afterward, the company, when they recovered, took the whole company to Maui to celebrate. Now, that's not always possible. That was
That's
not
right.
possible.
If you're running a tire distributorship in Charlotte, North Carolina, that may not happen, right?
No.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's not always possible, but it is an example of someone looking at ethics before numbers. So ethical behavior is, really important. If we have an unethical partner at the company, no matter how tempting it is to work with that person, maybe they get great numbers, but if they're not a fit culturally because
Yes.
they're not ethical,
That's right.
that's not going to work.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's do this real quick because I'm a faith-based gal. It says Finding Faith 1986 to the present. Ego stands for edging God out. When we start to get a distorted image of our own importance and see ourselves as the center of the universe, we lose touch with who we really are as children of God. Ken Blanchard. So let's do that one.
Yeah. Well, Ken I think, was always a deeply spiritual person. His parents were deeply spiritual people.
Yeah.
But he and Margie got really turned off to the church when they were in Ohio during the 1960s because the pastor of their church participated in the demonstrations against Vietnam. And the church dismissed that pastor and was ruthless and cruel. And
Oh,
Ken and Margie thought, boy, if that's what Christianity is, forget about it.
right.
Later in his life, Ken was reintroduced to the teachings of Jesus. He was on the Hour of Power at the Crystal Cathedral, and the pastor there, Schuler, was asking him, did you realize that Jesus practiced the 1-minute manager principles?
Oh,
He
yeah.
managed by walking around. He caught people doing things right, and when they weren't, he redirected them. So Ken started looking into the teachings of Jesus and seeing how much they aligned with servant leadership. And, we were talking about Martin Luther King earlier. It's that loving others as yourself and practicing the golden rule. And if you're a leader, your purpose is to serve, not to be served. And so Ken really is solid in that. And you asked what he's doing today.
Yeah.
At 86.
Yeah. He's my
Praise
hero.
the Lord. He's 86.
Yeah.
Which is a blessing because one of the things that he struggled with throughout his life, he sounds like a saint. And the publisher said, I don't want you to write a hagiography. What's his dark side? And the dark side is, he has a hard time saying no and setting boundaries. And one of the things he had a hard time setting boundaries with was food. So he struggled with his weight throughout his life. And so to see him reach age 86, healthy and lean, is just such a blessing. So he is taking life at a slower pace these days. He is just enjoying life. I talked to him yesterday and I'm like, Ken, where are you? Spiritually, where are you? And he said, I'm just in a great place. I'm just here. I feel close to God. And I'm just so blessed to be here with Margie. And he's just a happy camper.
Oh, that's so good. Well, I had the privilege of meeting him, and I was with a woman named Deborah Harris, who is from Charlotte, North Carolina. And Deborah Harris was somebody that I worked with in a coaching relationship, and she met me for coaching, and she says, we're going on a field trip. Like she took over. And I'm like, okay. So I get in Deborah Harris's car and we drive and we go meet Ken Blanchard. She's like, I knew that you would totally nerd out if we did this. So Deborah Harris, she is a wonderful, amazing woman of God. And she was instrumental in helping put together the Blumenthal Performing Arts Center here in Charlotte. She's just the most amazing gal. So she actually took me to meet Ken Blanchard one day. So I'm glad to hear
Mic
he's doing
drop,
good.
mic drop. What was your impression of Ken?
Like, so unassuming and shook your hand and got right up in my face. And he's good to meet you. If you're a friend of Deborah's, you're a friend of mine, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
just a really great guy. And I know he's met 4 bazillion people in his life, so I'm just one of the bazillion. But
Oh, well, I'll
it
be
was
sure to.
yeah, it was a big deal. It was a big deal for me. So I really appreciate it. Like some people want to meet their favorite sports star or Taylor Swift or whoever. I'd like that too. But it was a big deal to me. She knew that. So she made that happen in my life. I thought that was great. Yeah. So
So awesome. I can't wait to tell him.
yeah, really fun. Really fun. Well, we are at the bottom of the hour. I can't believe that our time is up, but is there one more nugget, like maybe one more thing that you would share that really help my leaders, help them want to come and get this book because we need a hero, a leadership hero, and this is truly a leadership hero. We need to see how he did it, you know.
Well, that's why I wrote the book, Nicole, because there
Yeah.
are a lot of biographies of people who they're innovative, they're amazing, people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, but this is a story of someone who is a nice guy and he finished first. Nice guys don't necessarily finish last. It's about somebody who achieved all this fame, made all this difference, and he didn't push and shove to get ahead. He didn't edge God out, or edge good out, depending on, if you're an atheist, whatever works for you. It's an inspiring story. And if you take nothing away, just try it on. Catch someone today doing something right. Catch one of your family members, the spouse, whatever it is. Just see how it raises the energy and take that away.
Yeah, that's so good. All right, everybody. It's been another fun, exciting, inspiring episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. And here's what I'd like you to do. It takes 1 second. Could you please go down to the bottom, hit the like button, and leave a little love note for Martha? We would really appreciate it. If people want to get the book, where do they go get the book?
Well, it's available for pre-order now on Amazon. I don't know when this is going to be airing, but the pub date is October 21. And if you are interested in any of the things we've talked about, go to Blanchard.com. There's something there for everyone, whether you're an individual contributor or a major corporation looking for a big initiative, you can find what you need there. If you want to know more about the book, MarthaLawrence.com. And Nicole, I can't tell you what a joy it has been to be with you for this hour.
Well, back at you. Yeah, good stuff. All right, everybody. We appreciate you listening. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more like-minded listeners. Remember, the journey to building a vibrant culture never stops. Stay inspired, keep nurturing your vibrant culture, and we can't wait to reconnect with you on the next exciting episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast.